If there's one thing I'm grateful for, is living in a generation where video games exist, and that's in the tiny gap of around 30 years in human history. So many people wonder in the outside world, what's so special about staring at pixels and colors on a television screen and interacting with it? It's because we're in the same boat. A lot of people in my life dismiss video games by easy first impressions. Because I'm shy myself and have a hard time giving off good first impressions, I wasn't a popular guy and had a hard time finding friends. Because of this, I don't judge video games, and it doesn't judge back. So it's become my best friend over the years. This in turn helped me to find friends in real life because I enjoy being around those who don't judge by face value and don't bask in the negatives of life. Like all friends, you mostly have your fond memories with them, and then there are those moments where you're not going to agree with everything. So in this video and double countdown, I'm going to count down the top 10 things I like in video games and the top 10 things I don't enjoy in video games. I guess there's only one rule. These are things that personally apply to me. So if you're expecting me to hate escort missions, it won't be here as I've worked around them just fine, and don't bother me as much. But that's just me. With that said, let's trudge through these bittersweet waters. I really don't mind if a video game puts you in the middle of nowhere and says, find out what to do next. These moments can be really fun, and it brings out wanting to know what the video game world is like and immerses you into it. However, if the game doesn't give you enough clues and you're left retracing your steps over and over again for the 5th time, then that's when I start losing interest in the game, especially if it happens often. This usually happens in games with mazes, several branching pathways, or simply anything where gamers can lose track of their progress or where they are in the big expensive level, or world in some cases. While Zelda and Metroid are outstanding games and there's nothing wrong with them or their limitations at the time, it's something that doesn't change the fact that I get lost in them with their extreme exploration, and it kills it for me. I really appreciate games where they give you plenty of clues, give you maps or hints, or even a system that leads you directly to your objective like in Dead Space. If there's one thing I have a problem with, is navigation when it gets complicated. I love exploration, I absolutely love getting around in my environment, but there's a point where progress has to be made if it isn't getting made. So let's look at the first 4 Resident Evil games and what made them so good. And there's 4 games, so it is successful. Because of your limited items, limited control, and limited viewpoints, your brain is fired up and trying to do whatever it takes to keep your character alive, which in turn drives up the tension factor, which is what makes the survival horror games so fun to play then and now. Despite I said limited a lot, you know these things enhance the experience for you because limited mechanics means limited choices to live, making you on edge all the time. Well, Resident Evil isn't my thing, but do you know what drives my tension up the wall while being fun and limited at the same time? I get the idea. Stealth moments are the same way, and many stereotype it like Resident Evil is clunky, tedious, and being unfair at points. But let me tell you why many enjoy the stealth genre for those who do. Just like Resident Evil, because of its own limited mechanics that I enjoy from stealth games, like planning things out in advance, the intense tension that comes from screwing up with the one chance you have, plus the mechanics of the AI hunting you out in the dark, there are moments that just scrunch up tension that you can't feel anywhere else. Everyone is into their thing for getting their stomach squirming, and for me, it's hiding in the dark and waiting for my moment. hate frequent pausing. Now you may be thinking, well, Zelda and Resident Evil is full of pausing for their inventory screens. No, those are perfectly fine because they're well spaced out and you can grab what items you need for a while and move on. I'm talking about where it's mandatory to have this cuff around your ankle with a ball on the end of the chain and you have to pull it up with you every few seconds. It's a pace breaker. It destroys the momentum of the game it provides. And having to wait for the game to catch up with my enjoyment is tough. I'm sorry, it's tough. Okami, Secret of Mana, and Sonic Unleashed aren't bad games at all, and you won't hear me saying it. What I'm getting at is that it could have been executed better. All I'm saying is that there should have been shortcut keys to games like Zelda from the Water Temple and Okami rather than manually having to switch screens over and over again to get the job done. With Secret of Mana, it seems inconsistent to put the waiting and strategizing behind Final Fantasy with the get in there and destroy everything Zelda mechanics. It seems unbalanced to put a fast and slow mechanics together. Same with Sonic Unleashed. It messes with the pacing like no tomorrow to putting these fast attack sections with these slow to pausing platforming sections. Obviously these are great games and many enjoy them. And you know what? A lot of people like pineapples and I don't. So I say you can have my share because I love watermelon. Anything wrong with that? Of course not. It just means everyone is different and into different things. Whew, I raged a bit on that last one. Time to breathe. No wonder YouTubers get hate. I think I'm hating myself. Okay, let's go. Sometimes there are video games where you only stick with one character. I'm not done. Sometimes there are video games where you can unlock an alternative character like Luigi from Super Mario Galaxy. And while the playstyles are different, they are essentially the same with a few tweaks. And then there are characters that use their own entire arsenal that's exclusive to them from other characters. The reason I enjoyed Final Fantasies 4, 9, and 10, and don't worry, I like the other Final Fantasies for other reasons, it's because characters function in their own way to contribute to the party, making every party member needed and unique. If it becomes a situation where, like in Final Fantasy 10, where you lose Yuna for a long section of the game, and you're like, where's my white mage? And it throws your strategy off, then every character is important and you need them all, which is what makes me care about all of them. With Final Fantasy 7, when Aeris died, the solution was simple. Don't need Aeris, I can give the materia to someone else. Obviously, Final Fantasy 7 was able to be beaten since every character could learn every general ability. I didn't need Aeris, meaning characters were expendable and there was nothing unique I needed them for. It was tough to connect with any of the characters because they didn't have any specific role in battle. Give me unique characters with unique abilities. Don't give me an RPG with a checklist of abilities that everyone can learn. It makes the game a whole lot more fun and gives me a reason to care a lot about the characters, making the adventure that much more thought out, meaningful, and creative. It's really disappointing when they cookie cut the characters at what they can do. Like everyone else, I like certain characters, spoiler, and there are certain characters I dread seeing. There are 4 of them. Can you guess what they are? First, the just cuz characters. These are characters that do things for no real reason. Some will really like Kefka because he's so mysterious and intriguing in destroying the world, and while I respect that viewpoint, I don't think I can ever find it in myself to ever like a mass murderer if he does it just to do it, even if his deck is short on a few cards. Riddle characters are those who twist up their language in a way you can't understand them or want to sound different. While again there are quite a few who respect these types of characters, here, this conversation with Ding Fang will explain it all.
This land is blessed with beautiful nature. The babbling of the brook cleanses my very soul.
Leave lines like that to Joe Yu, will you? You sound like a damn fool when you say that stuff.
As for the next type, one word, X-Death. These are boasters and guys who laugh a little too much. And finally, now with Shadow the Hedgehog about developing characters. I'm not one of those guys that's going to bash that people like his attitude because it's different from Sonic's and that's reason enough for people to like it. Here is why I do like Sonic more though, is because Sonic is developed and confident. He's got nothing bothering him in his past, he's sure of himself, and has no doubts in his role to stop Robotnik. And while Shadow, he's still working on that. If he has amnesia and doesn't remember who he is, then become something. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic did it fine with tuning up an identity with no identity to reflect from. It's just when I saw the Shadow the Hedgehog game, it felt like a game where a character was developing into a developing character rather than a developed character. I'm sorry, but I can't take this guy seriously. Okay, I admit it. As you've noticed, I'm a boy, so I like the other gender. Guilty as charged. I think girls are really attractive. Yeah, call it boy syndrome. But there's something I really admire about the females in video games. Being 26 and being there at the beginning in video games when girls were damsels in distress, back in the day, and admittedly still even today, video games are dominated by male characters taking more assertive roles in the media. So when it comes to male characters, it's set in stone what's expected out of them to being heroes. But when it comes to females coming to the front lines, I guess the best way to describe it is Wang Yuanji from Dynasty Warriors. Sima Zhao, a laid-back character in the Jin Kingdom who is supposed to be commanding a battle, is not very confident in voicing his concerns in the battlefield, and doesn't participate in the battle. He reveals to Wang Yuanji the possibility of an ambush a comrade is about to fall for, and it happens. Sima Zhao refuses to move in to help him, but Yuanji, instead of sitting back like the kick back and relax stereotype that was back in the 80s with video games, instead rushes all the way across the battlefield to help him out of it and saves him single-handedly. It really is refreshing to see how far females have come since back then. While some of the girls are obnoxious, it's good to know that there are women out there that can really kick some serious butt compared to men sometimes. I love equality, so bring more females to show us up. Men have taken the spotlight long enough. Oh yeah, Alicia Dragoon, this music is for you. I used to like RPGs, but as time has been passing for the past few years, I've been avoiding them to the point where I've stopped playing them entirely. The last one I played through is Final Fantasy XII, so I stopped before the infamous Final Fantasy XIII came out. It's because we haven't been getting along really well recently, or they haven't been aging well for me. RPGs to me anyways have been coming up to a bunch of grinding where you spam battles over and over again. For the same reason that some people find Call of Duty's simple shooting mechanics tiresome, or Dynasty Warriors spam the button over and over again to be tiresome, RPGs aren't becoming my cup of tea nowadays. Now don't get me wrong, I love some RPGs, but usually I need other things to do like the Chocobo side quests in Final Fantasy IX or things to keep the grinding in moderation. However, if the RPG becomes step 1 grinding, step 2 grinding, then step 3 grinding, then it won't hold my attention for long. This isn't just strictly to RPGs, but also to other leveling games like the early Dynasty Warriors games or that mail delivery thing from Kingdom Hearts 2, and it can happen elsewhere as well. But it's usually RPGs that have them. When you push it to those repetitious limits, you just wonder, was that really necessary? Everyone has games they avoid because it's not their type of repetition. And well, sorry World of Warcraft, Pokemon, and Legend of Dragoon, but you pushed it. It's all about leveling and leveling, and more leveling. Holy crap! Now, to be fair, Mega Man deserves every inch of credit he gets. Wonderful assortment of weapons, top tiers in replayability, insane difficulty to keep the rush coming, the gameplay, fluid, smooth, and simple. Mega Man and the legacy it's left behind deserves it the titles of being one of the greatest series in existence. So, let's start slow. I've honestly and genuinely tried out 3 Mega Man games, Mega Man's 1, 2, and 3, at different points in my life, and they're not for me, and I've never felt invigorated with them. Simple as that, and I think I know why. Look over to the left. Do you see Mega Man's health? He's designed to take damage rather than avoid damage. Think about it, Mega Man doesn't crouch, he doesn't have any momentum physics, he's a fairly big target, and he has armor to weigh him down from running and jumping, but at the sacrifice of having a lot of health to make up for it. Now let's compare and look at the opposite. Mario is fast, a very nimble platformer, is really good at dodging attacks at a moment's notice, but you know that's compensated with his lack of health. Just let enemies touch him 1 to 3 times depending on the game and condition he's in, and it's start over. Now I really do appreciate what the Mega Man games offer, but it's simply my expectations and what I like in platforming games, or any genre of games in general, and something I'm used to. Well, think of it like Super Smash Bros. Some players prefer power and overpowering their opponents, and then there's me who likes speed to dodge the attacks and use a lot of light attacks instead. Now, to be honest, this will be the toughest part of the countdown to write the script for because it goes against the norms of the internet. A lot of people say gameplay is the most important part of a video game, that modern video games are bringing us all this crap like story, graphics, cutscenes, all this unnecessary garbage to the front lines to mess with the gameplay. That made video games so special in the first place. And I say, who cares? I've come across good and bad retro games, and I've come across good and bad modern games. And it's not because of standalone reasons like graphics or gameplay by themselves. Just like books or movies, video games are portals where you can leave your couch to get immersed into the world, and what defines video games on what makes them so great is how much you're forgetting that you're holding a controller and getting engrossed in the game that you're playing. So when Sniper Wolf dies in Metal Gear Solid, are you thinking about the square button on your controller, or are you actually there experiencing it? Because you're in the world. So when you're running from the fish in Super Mario Bros. 3, are you thinking about the graphics, or are you thinking about that red thing about to eat you? Because you're in the world. Let's look at, I don't know, the entire Zelda series. Some say this Zelda game is better and that this other one sucks. And I say each Zelda game is immersive in their own unique way, and they're all great at executing it. There isn't a bad Zelda game. The point is, video games are meant to be enjoyed and get immersed into. It's not a checklist to mark off and say, oh, these 8 out of 10 points have to be fulfilled for me to potentially like the game. Overall, bring me a game that sucks me in, and that's all I ask for.